Welcome back to the Recap Show. On today's episode, we will be talking about monetizing your brand, the value of losing, and we will be joined by the one and only Judge Christen. Enjoy the show. Welcome back to the Recap Show. On this year of the Recap Show, we've been trying out some really awesome segments, and this one is back by popular demand. We have Judge Christen in the house. Judge. All right, Judge. They're coming in hot. People want a verdict. All right, Judge Christen. I recently told my mother-in-law about my grandma's secret recipe for cheesecake that she shared with me before she passed. My mother-in-law offered to make it for me, which is sweet, but I refused to give her the recipe out of respect for my grandma. My mother-in-law has been acting funny around me ever since I declined sharing it with her. What's the move? Do I share it with her so she doesn't hold a grudge, or should I hold the line so my grandma doesn't get mad at me in heaven? This is tough, Judge.
Can you just repeat the first sentence?
Yes.
Did it say I recently shared a recipe?
I recently told my mother-in-law about my grandma's secret recipe for cheesecake.
That seems like the first mistake. Here, if you don't want to share the recipe, maybe don't share that there is a recipe. Keep going.
Okay. Was that the verdict, Judge?
No.
Okay, got it.
These are just facts. Collecting facts.
Yes. That's true. In order to make a verdict, folks, we need all the facts.
You need all the facts.
My mother-in-law offered to make it for me, which is sweet, but I refused to give her the recipe out of respect for my grandma.
Is it sweet, though, or is it just a little pushy?
Like, she had ulterior motives, right?
I don't know. It's like, if someone's family member passes, you don't then have your own feelings about it of like how to fix them or help them. You just you give them a little space. Do you really want someone else to make you the recipe that someone who just passed used to make you? Does that truly make you feel better?
These are all great questions.
Oh, you don't get to say.
I think there are a lot of feelings going on in this. So the ultimate question, Judge, is what's the move? Do I share it with her so she doesn't hold a grudge? Or should I hold the line so my grandma doesn't get mad at me in heaven?
Well, I think the answer is neither. You can't make decisions. The verdict is you can't make decisions based on what other people feel. So you just close your eyes and you ask your inner wisdom what to do, and you never second guess it.
Wow. A verdict that transcends way beyond this question. Judge, you're truly extraordinary.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's move on to the next. Judge Christen, let me cut to the chase. My husband left his toothbrush at the hotel we were staying at on vacation a few days ago, and now he is not so secretly using my toothbrush at home. Something about this is deeply disturbing, and I don't know why. How long will this go on? I don't want to hurt feelings, but I also don't want a wet toothbrush when I brush my teeth. Do I hide my toothbrush? Do I confront him? What's the move?
Okay, I have so many thoughts here. First of all, brush your teeth first, and then your toothbrush won't be wet. Second of all, I don't know why people care when the person that they willingly trade saliva with uses their toothbrush, but it is a big thing that some people care about and some people don't. Also, buy a new toothbrush for your hubby.
Whoa.
Simple.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Those were a lot of verdicts, Judge.
Yeah, those were all the verdicts, but it's a pretty simple problem.
Buy a toothbrush for your husband.
Or any of the others.
Just get on board with sharing. Sharing is caring.
Here's the thing. You can share your partner's toothbrush. I approve of that, but it is not a forever situation. You don't like have one toothbrush holder for a couple. You know, that's like a temporary situation. So just fix it and move on. The verdict's in. Our friends at Amazon Business know the importance of highlighting the business of women's sports. So today we're going to talk about monetizing your brand, which, as athletes, we're all running our own little companies, the company of us. Tell me about that experience, Tobin.
Yeah, I think like the definition of kind of like athletes as a brand has changed significantly since social media. Now it feels like you almost have your own like platform, right? There's no kind of like middleman deciding who's going to get popularity or like endorsements. But the truth is, like, sports still revolves around these tentpole moments. Like, we have a big one coming up. We have March Madness, in which case, like, somebody's going to kind of make a brand and a name for themselves that is going to create like a lot of attention and audience that they can capture, within their platforms, and creates a lot of opportunities that brands probably want to buy into, because brands want to be a part of these big moments, and those big moments kind of curate stars and curate who energy goes to. Traditionally, women's athletes have crushed in marketing, and it's kind of come at like a little bit of, we kind of had to, because even if you look at today, the current like environment of women's sports, like look at what Caitlin Clark makes as her salary. It's like nothing, but as endorsements and sponsorships, she crushes. Like it's crazy the difference between the two. And it has always felt like, there's been a huge discrepancy between men's and women's athletes when it comes to brands and marketability, because men's athletes, they can rely on their salaries. They can basically opt into sponsorships and endorsements, where it's always felt like endorsements and sponsorships has always kind of created the most opportunity for women's athletes.
Yeah, I think there's a blessing and a curse to all of it. I think when you zoom out, you always want to look at these discrepancies and say why, where are they coming from, and like what's the overall effect. And, with my perspective and what I've learned is that when you zoom out and you look at the obligation to do a double duty, to do two jobs, like it's going to lead to exhaustion. One can detract from another, yada, yada. But there's always a blessing there that when I zoom back into my own life, that I felt that I get to share my story, that I get to be multifaceted, that I get to have different dimensions that aren't necessarily looked down upon. And I think that is the upside of having the women's sports ecosystem requiring almost the lack of a wall between athletes and their fans. Like the brands are asking us for so much, to share so much of us, because that's what the audience wants to know. And, of course you want to be able to opt in. Of course you want to be able to get a fair value, but there's other energy that we exchange. And I think that that's been something that was an unexpected blessing for me, having to carry a bit of a double duty.
It's a huge opportunity to be seen and to inspire and to be represented for the next generation, because, where maybe we don't get the same kind of attention on like traditional media, like social media has created a pathway and a door for us to inspire the next generation. They can see us, they're accessible, athletes are accessible to other people. And it's not just narrow by like, oh, it's just that one athlete that's marketable. It's like, actually, no, every like little girl can find themselves in any of the athletes. Could just go on social media and you'll be able to find an athlete that you can relate to, that you can be inspired by, that you can follow. And that's so important to this equation. And I think it's something that has absolutely changed the trajectory for women's sports.
For today's daily discussion, we are going to be talking about, you might say, the art of losing, the importance of losing, the benefit of losing. And I'm going to be talking about that with my expert loser over here. Please share some of your knowledge on the big failure that is your life. Oh, it's too fun.
The amount of joy that is. You're just having such a good time.
Such a great time here on the recap show.
You should just keep going. Yeah, we feel like, so a lot of times with the daily discussion, look, we have some pretty like amazing conversations at home that we're just like, this is just an awesome thing to talk about. And, throughout our careers, this is a common theme that comes back up, even with our guests. Like it's a common theme when you hear, especially guests that have had kind of a full circle like journey in their career, like this common theme of what you kind of look back on and you call like resilience or grit or understanding kind of the highs and lows of career, and how thankful and grateful you are actually more for the lows and what they teach you. And this kind of was brought back into the forefront of our minds because we just watched the SheBelieves Cup. And obviously, for those of you that follow the U.S. Women's National Team, the U.S. Women's National Team lost in the last game and in the tournament to Japan. And this was the first time in a while the U.S. Women's National Team had lost this tournament, but more so they were just coming off like this kind of epic win of the Olympics, right? And this is the start of the new cycle, which is always really fun. It's basically you get like 2 years to kind of grow and develop. And I know for a lot of folks that are like, oh my gosh, the US team like lost. And honestly, they got like crushed by Japan. Like Japan was an absolute delight to watch the whole entire tournament. And also like just watching what's happening with the US Women's National Team and growing the player pool and all this was awesome. But
okay, let me interject. Okay, so have you seen the like live art where that person is climbing and they jump up and then they jump down and then they fall and then they jump back up and they're like going higher and higher and they fall further and further and
No.
it's like
this is so cool.
what's it called, like that type of performance that it's like live art?
Oh, he's on a trampoline.
Exactly.
Yep.
Everyone's seen it. It's like everyone's seen this. So that was like very poignant because it's the idea of like growth and what it looks like. And it's always a step down before you can make 2 steps up. So SheBelieves Cup to me was like a little fall in the path of like growth. But what I think is more interesting is when you are telling your story and you think you're about to be at the summit. When you reach a final of a World Cup and you say, I cannot lose because I will never be back here again. I'm not going to fall down and then jump even higher the next time. That is failure. There's like the setback, there is the, minor hurdle, all these things. But what I think is hard to understand where the benefit is when you get to the pinnacle and you lose. And you said to me in a conversation, so I'm teeing you up for this, about how winning dynasties, winning teams have to be able to win after all different conditions. You have to be able to win after you've won, and you have to win after you've failed. So we started talking about the overall zoomed out history of the U.S. Women's National Team. Yeah. Will you share a little bit about the wins and the losses and the timing of those things?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I define the U.S. Women's National Team as the greatest rebounding team and the greatest winning team when you're expected to win. And I'll give an example right now in the rebounding, and it's not to kind of take away from what just happened. But the U.S. Women's National Team in 2023 had kind of an epic like failure at the World Cup, the worst showing at the World Cup. Everybody was saying the U.S. Women's National Team's finished, the whole world is caught up. All this stuff.
Their favorite rhetoric.
Favorite rhetoric that everybody thinks they're saying for the first time. Then all of a sudden, Emma Hayes comes in. A few months later, the U.S. Women's National Team wins the Olympics. Like quintessential U.S. Women's National Team. And like I applaud Emma. Like Emma's doing a fantastic job. But what Emma has done is certainly nothing new to the program of the U.S. Women's National Team. I date back to 2007 World Cup. The U.S. Women's National Team lose in the semifinal. There was so much drama around that World Cup. 2008, they obviously hire Pia right before the Olympics. Pia wins a gold medal at the 2008 Olympics. Rebound. Then another situation. Tom Sermanni, right before the 2015 World Cup, gets fired. Jill Ellis comes in a few months before the 2015 World Cup and wins a World Cup. This rebound effect, like, so what Emma did with the team, going from kind of a failure quickly to a win, actually is like very much a part of the code, the legacy, the ethos of the U.S. women's national team.
Okay, two things to get at.
Yes.
So I think the first part is we also win after we won. When you have a target on your back, that's...
Yeah, I was going to get to that aspect of it. So basically, what I just shared there was what I consider like rebounding. So going from a loss quickly to a win. So like learning from losing. But I actually want to like take it like a step further where the U.S. women's national team goes from good to great. Because I think rebounding's kind of easier than this next part, which is like going from great to great, which is when you're supposed to win, when everyone expects you to win. You win again.
Mm-hmm. And that's when you have a target on your back, and that's when it's harder. So the other thing that I just want to get a little more into is looking at that legacy of rebounding. Why? How?
So I think there's like a couple different ingredients to like great rebounders. I think it's like resilience. I think it's learning. One of the most important like learnings that I ever remember is actually from the 2011 World Cup. We played Japan in the final. We lost in penalty kicks in the final of a World Cup, which is like as close as you can possibly get to winning a World Cup is losing in a penalties. And it's a little infuriating because I always say this was the first World Cup I ever played in. So getting that close to winning a World Cup and not winning it, especially because the U.S. women's national team at that time hadn't won a World Cup since 99. So there was extreme amount of pressure on this World Cup. So getting that close and losing was a moment in, I think, the program's history where we could have like just folded, and said like, look, maybe it's true, maybe like winning World Cups like is hard. Maybe it's not for maybe it's not for the U.S. women's national team to win all the time. Like I think there was like a moment there where it was like you can just be like, I don't want to say it, but you could just be like a loser. Like that could be it. That could be the last thing like you ever do. Or you like are like, oh my gosh, like we just have a whole tournament of learnings. Like we literally got to the final stage and now we know what we did wrong, or what we could do more of or what we could do better of. And the crazy thing is I actually thought the U.S. women's national team played better in the 2011 final than in the 2015 rematch of this final.
Well, you make it sound a little easy, like, oh yeah, just learn from your mistakes. But think about it. Like, let's just zoom in a little bit further. Imagine learning from your mistakes if you missed a penalty in that World Cup final and you have to go back and watch it again and then again and again. Like, that's what learning from your mistakes is like. It's actually a painful,
it's so
embarrassing process where you have to almost hand over your ego for the betterment of the future.
Yeah, I think this is actually one of the hardest things, what you just said, is like being like, I don't want to say confident enough, but being so wanting to win that you're willing to like go to the soul of like why you lost, and like almost admitting to yourself like it wasn't enough, or almost being like,
that's like almost like inner trauma work.
It really is. It's like getting feedback.
It's like going to therapy.
It's getting feedback you don't want to hear, right?
Afraid.
Like when you fail, like you don't want to then go back and watch it again and experience it again or dissect it, Like, of course, when you do something good, you want to watch it over and over and over again, right? And there is like a lot of benefit to doing that. But dissecting the bad, like that's where there's so much gold. And I think sometimes people are like, oh yeah, I know what I did wrong. I know. And it's like, let's sit in the loss. Like, let's sit in this learning because there's so much here. Like as much as you want to sit in the success, like let's sit in the loss and like, let's really learn.
And honestly, it's almost the discomfort that teaches more than like anything else that's there.
Yeah, and like getting comfortable with the discomfort of losing is like not because like you want to repeat the action, but because you know that understanding the loss is going to be what gets you to the success.
Okay, so We're talking about after a loss, after a failure, sit in that, and maybe you'll learn something, maybe you'll win.
Yeah.
There's another rebound in sport that usually comes from after failing, which is when a coach gets fired. And there's like some science somewhere, some research somewhere that says like then the team wins usually. And there's like a certain amount of games or time that they call this rebound effect. Yeah. So usually your coach gets fired after you've played poorly. So you're in a bad way. Coach gets removed, new coach comes in, interim, whatever, and there's this uplift. Let's talk about that psychology.
Yeah, I think during losing, you also can like weed out what I would say are there a lot comes to the surface when you lose, right? Like character especially comes to the surface when you lose, and you very quickly kind of figure out the people that, you know, you kind of want to go back to war with in a loss. And I think like very quickly, a lot of times in these rebounding effects, not only do coaches change, but players change too, right? Like it's a moment to kind of weed out. And what we get is like this influx of like new growth mindset, like energy. And I love this time because you kind of get to see the best of players again, where like they care. They're at meetings earlier. They're more attentive to the coach and maybe new ideas. They want to show off. They want to show their worth. And you get this like really big surge of like energy and excitement and maybe even new like vessels of people. And there's something kind of magical about it.
So you're talking about two things. So one's like the truth is revealed in failure, and then you have new opportunity, right? So in the example I gave, new coach. But I would go a little further because sometimes like it's not just weeding out the bad. There's actually some magic to this research that haven't studied, I don't know, but I can feel it being in those environments that's causing the behavior that you're talking about, like this feeling of new. And the best way I would describe it is like when you're in a situation and you're failing, you're like almost looking back. Because even to know you're failing is to like have to look back at it. And when you have this rebound, it's like to look forward. Yeah. It's like new coach, what are they going to do? There's nothing to look back at because they haven't done anything. So it kind of reorientates you so that you can be thinking about the future. So that brings energy and optimism. And, you know, I think in Japanese culture, and I have 3 Japanese teammates, so I ask them all the time about their culture because so much that we learn about sports culture comes from Japanese baseball, I think. But there's this idea that every single morning you wake up with new energy. So there is no, and I don't know if this is like still true, but at a period of time, the belief was there is no need for periodization. There's no need to take the night off before the marathon. Like every day you get a new renewed sense of energy. Your cup fills up with the sun and the moon. And okay, we do know that we need to periodize, thank God. As a 36-year-old athlete, thank God. But like, think about that with a coach. Yeah. Can you think about that with a failure? Can you bring the hope of victory every day while you're failing? Yeah. Can you bring the spirit of curiosity and eagerness and energy even when you're at your worst? Because when you do not fail. And so I think we obviously have these like time stamps of like, this is when we've won and this is when we've lost. But in every moment, you're creating that reality by your own behaviors and your own actions. And so I feel like there's a really big lesson there. In how you can show up each day anew, or how you can show up in a moment and have learned from the failure even before it's happened. Yeah.
And so like it was funny because people asked me like about like, oh, like the US women's national team just like lost, you know, and SheBelieves, like, how do you feel about it? And I was like, I'm so happy that they lost. Like this team needs to lose as much as possible because that means that they're trying new things. They're putting themselves in uncomfortable situations. Look, there will be a time, it's not now, closer to when we get to 2027, where all of a sudden it's like, no, you don't want to be losing. This is now the time to start winning.
To be honest, this is by design.
Yeah.
Like for most of my tenure on the national team, when Jill was the coach, she set out to make sure that we could not win all our games because I think she thought it was cursed if you won all your games. So she was just like, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
So we would go out. We'd be in the off season. France would be in season. England would be in season. We'd go, like, we'd fly across the country. We would land and play the next day. It was like circumstances that we could not win because that's how important failing is. Yeah. And I was not surprised to see the U.S. fail under Emma Hayes in this moment because I think it is what an experienced leader knows you have to do to win later.
Absolutely. And like I think where the Emma Hayes heir will get judged, like she's not going to get judged on like winning a rebound tournament. Like she will absolutely get judged on like what she does in 2027 because this is now her project, right? This is like her time to develop this group and to lose and to win and to figure out that blend of, you know, losing and learning and winning and making it a habit.
Yeah.
And how do you win? Because like there's ways to lose, positive ways to lose, and there's really positive ways to win. And I'm so excited to see that trajectory.
Yeah. And I think the last point I'll make here is we get to decide where the story begins and ends. So when you're failing, when you feel like you're failing, why don't you decide that that's the middle?
Yeah.
Why don't you decide that that's the big culmination, the climax of the book, but the end is up. We're going to have a happy ending. So in 2011, when you lost, you did not think that was the halfway point of your book, but it was, you thought it was the end. You thought I failed, but it wasn't even the halfway point. It was the beginning. Yeah. So I think everyone can learn from that when you're having a bad day, a bad week, God forbid a bad year. It's the midpoint.
Yeah.
And what can you learn? Yeah. How can you sit in it? What can you weed out? Yeah. And how do you bring a renewed energy?
Yeah. And I love that. And I think that ultimately what you're saying is like, no matter where you are in your journey, not just like your sports journey or your life journey, like if you've experienced a loss, like recently in whatever category, like you're in the middle of the game.
Yep.
You know, what's going to happen next? Every business starts with an idea. How can you go from daydreamer to industry leader? Amazon Business accelerates your journey. With smart business buying, get everything you need to grow in one familiar place, from office supplies to IT essentials and maintenance tools. Amazon Business takes the buying experience you know and love from Amazon, plus tools that help you save costs and make insight-based decisions. Ready to bring your vision to life? Learn how at amazonbusiness.com.
All right, everybody. And now it is time for everyone's favorite segment, community questions. And today I'm going first. JC from Fargo, North Dakota asked, what kind of bird are you?
I mean, what can I choose from here?
Flamingo? What's the one that's toucan? What is that? A toucan. A pelican, a seagull, a crow. What are those ones that eat all the dirt
My
on the
family
ground?
would be like kind of disappointed in me. I feel like they're like really like bird people. I really haven't leaned into the birds here. Hawks are cool. Oh, red-tailed hawk. That's actually my pop-up that passed away. Whenever we see a red-tailed hawk, it reminds us of him.
So he's a red-tailed hawk.
A red-tailed hawk. So maybe it's like a family thing, a red-tailed hawk.
Okay.
Josie from Florida wants to know, if you were in an all-girls band, what archetype would you be?
What's an archetype?
Ooh, like what type of girl band? Like would you be like K-pop? Would you be like Destiny's Child? Would you be like...
You're just telling me to find a band that I'm like? I think
what girl band would you want to be in?
I think I would have been a Spice Girl.
Ooh.
Yeah, but that's just because they were the biggest stars.
You think so?
Yeah, like of our generation. Like Destiny's Child went on to be Beyonce.
And you made all of those dances, like, with your sisters, right?
No, not Spice Girls.
No?
No, that was the talent show. Lenata Bay Elementary talent show. That was different.
Oh. I did a talent show dance to Mulan once.
We all must see this. Jamie. Oh my gosh, is yours Jamie?
Josie.
I have a JC and a Jamie, and you have a...
We only pick J's for questions, so we don't want to give it away. We go by alphabetical. So G's.
K.
K's are next. That's embarrassing. Katie's, get ready.
Jamie from Minnesota wants to know, how do you collaborate on designs for Re-Ink? What's the creative process like?
Yeah, it's really fun, actually. So we really lean into, obviously, our community and when we storytell. And also we lean into our team members because we have an awesome team. And I want to give an example for Pride. We have a lot of queer folks in our company, and they give a ton of input on the inspiration around Pride. So it comes from like our collective experiences, understandings, what's going on in the world. So the design really is inspired by all of those things. But I guess ultimately we like deeply listen and we're super intentional, and we want the designs to be much more meaningful than just, something that
what I love about your
exists.
Creative process is like the idea of like going on a walk, like kind of just like leaving the mundane and creating an intentional space to be creative.
Yeah.
I feel like that's really important. Everyone needs a little bit more time in our lives to be creative or to be silly or to be outside of the ordinary. And then exactly what you said, drawing on experiences and values rather than colors and palettes. Like it's about what we're trying to share, and then it gets into the how.
Yeah, definitely. If it definitely starts first with kind of the storytelling. I will give one example that I feel really inspired by lately is I took my bike to Joshua Tree, and what I've experienced like cycling by myself, like on long rides, and Joshua Tree is like magical, where it almost put me like in a time loop where, because the scenery is like so similar, like you kind of start tripping out a little bit. And like I was like exhausted and seeing the same thing repeatedly, the same beauty. And I felt like I got to a point where like I only could like hear like my soul.
Whoa.
Like I was
like
having
meditative.
like dialogue with my soul.
I see.
And I came back from that trip and I was like hyper inspired, and I was just like jacked up on like just inspiration that I was just like kind of like just throwing your way. So I think like a lot of future things that we talk about maybe that are seen are probably from that.
That's
trip.
So cool, because you're saying like the scape, like the desert scape was similar. So it's like repeating the same mantra again and again.
Yeah, it was insane.
And it's like seeing the cactus again and again. And then all of a sudden it's a meditative state. Really cool. Thanks for sharing.
Okay, last one. You ready?
Yeah.
Lori from Albany asks, what are your thoughts on kitchen gadgets, time savers, or cabinet clutter?
I think a bit of both. I know that you think I have a lot of kitchen gadgets. So I think I know that what you thought I was going to say. But if you overdo it, it becomes clutter. And I live in a household where not a lot of things are allowed to stay on the surface. Some people call it minimalist. Some people call it brutalist. But it's a bare aesthetic. So we're not allowed a lot of gadgets. So every time I buy something for my kitchen, which I do love and it makes me very happy, I generally have to think of where I'm going to then put it away. However, and you all must be dying to know, I recently bought a slow cooker, and right now at this very moment, there is a pot roast waiting at home for me that will have cooked for 8 hours.
Yeah. Kristen Press's Close Friends is basically just like a Kristen Press master class on cooking.
I wouldn't call it a master class, but
I'd say it's very relatable.
The opposite of
one
masterful.
Extra thing I will say is one of my favorite things about your kitchen aesthetic is like our refrigerator is like so organized and beautiful.
Thank you.
And it brings me a lot of joy.
Me as well.
Yeah. Great job.
I will show you all a photo of my kitchen, the inside of my refrigerator, to bring this one home, you know? Thank you all for your wonderful questions. We love this segment. We love all of you. We love sharing a little bit of ourselves with you all here on the Recap Show. Keep those questions coming.
Want more of the Recap Show? Never miss an episode by subscribing on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.